The Canary by Catherine Mansfield. Read by Lisa Armitage. You see that big nail to the right of the front door? I can scarcely look at it even now, and yet I could not bear to take it out. I should like to think it was there always, even after my time. I sometimes hear the next people saying, "There must have been a cage hanging from there." And it comforts me. I feel he is not quite forgotten. You cannot imagine how wonderfully he sang. It was not like the singing of other canaries, and that isn't just my fancy. Often from the window I used to see people stop at the gate to listen, or they would lean over the fence by the mock orange for quite a long time, carried away. For instance, when I'd finished the house in the afternoon and changed my blouse and brought my sewing onto the veranda here, he used to hop, hop, hop from one perch to the other, tap against the bars as if to attract my attention, sip a little water, just as a professional singer might, and then break into a song so exquisite that I had to put my needle down to listen to him. I can't describe it. I wish I could. But it was always the same every afternoon, and I felt that I understood every note of it. I loved him. Oh, how I loved him. Perhaps it does not matter so very much what one loves in this world. Of course, there was always my little house and the garden, but for some reason they were never enough. Flowers respond wonderfully, but they don't sympathize. Then I loved the evening star. But after he came into my life, I forgot the evening star. I did not need it any more. But it was strange. When the Chinaman who came to the door with birds to sell held him up in his tiny cage, and instead of fluttering like the poor little goldfinches, he gave a faint, small chirp, I found myself saying, just as I had said to the star over the gum tree, "There you are, my darling." From that moment he was mine. It surprises even me now to remember how he and I shared each other's lives. The moment I came down in the morning and took the cloth off his cage, he greeted me with a drowsy little note. I knew it meant, "Missus, Missus." Then I hung him on the nail outside while I got my 3 young men their breakfasts, and I never brought him in to do his cage until we had the house to ourselves again. Then, when the washing up was done, it was quite a little entertainment. I spread a newspaper over a corner of the table, and when I put the cage on it, he used to beat with his wings despairingly, as if he didn't know what was coming. "You're a regular little actor," I used to scold him. I scraped the tray, dusted it with fresh sand, filled his seed and water tins, tucked a piece of chickweed and half a chilli between the bars, and I am perfectly certain he understood and appreciated every item of this little performance. You see, by nature he was exquisitely neat. There was never a speck on his perch. And you'd only to see him enjoy his bath to realize he had a real small passion for cleanliness. Company, you see. That was what he was. Perfect company. If you have lived alone, you will realize how precious that is. Of course, there were my 3 young men who came in to supper every evening, and sometimes they stayed in the dining room afterwards, reading the paper, but I could not expect them to be interested in the little things that made my day. But I remember feeling so especially thankful that I was not quite alone that evening. I told him after they had gone, I said, "Do you know what they call Mrs.?" And he put his head on one side and looked at me with his little bright eye until I could not help laughing. It seemed to amuse him. Have you kept birds? If you haven't, all this must sound perhaps exaggerated. People have the idea that birds are heartless, cold little creatures, not like dogs or cats. My washerwoman used to say every Monday when she wondered why I didn't keep a nice fox terrier. There's no comfort missing a canary. Untrue. Dreadfully untrue. I remember one night I had a very awful dream. Even after I'd woken up, I could not get over it. So I put on my dressing gown and came down to the kitchen for a glass of water. It was a winter night and raining hard. I suppose I was half asleep still, but through the kitchen window that hadn't a blind, it seemed to me the dark was staring in, spying. And suddenly I felt it was unbearable that I had no one to whom I could say, "I've had such a dreadful dream," or "Hide me from the dark." I even covered my face for a minute, and then there came a little "Sweet, sweet, sweet, sweet," said the darling little fellow again, softly, as much as to say, "I'm here, missus, I'm here." That was so beautifully comforting that I nearly cried. And now he's gone. I shall never have another bird, another pet of any kind. How could I? When I found him lying on his back with his eye dim and his claws wrung, when I realized that never again should I hear my darling sing, something seemed to die in me. My breast felt hollow, as if it was his cage,